But when looking back last night on the player performances, I wanted to start specifically with the play of Jalen Brunson for the Knicks and how he was used in the third quarter versus Charlotte. I think a lot of people point to the second quarter as a bad one for the Hornets, which I would agree with, but also coming out of halftime, we were hoping for some adjustments, hoping for a renewed energy, which it looked a little bit better coming out of half. Earlier in the game for the Knicks, it was a lot of heart, which I will get to in a minute, and Mikal Bridges. But in the third quarter, Brunson owned it. He was the guy that they went to for New York. He was just too much for the players on the Hornets, specifically LaMelo Ball. They spammed the Brunson pick and roll, which mostly included Josh Hart as the screener, because that's who LaMelo was defending for the majority of the game. And part of me thinks that the Hornets were willing to switch too easily, and that played right into Brunson's hands. Everyone talks about how Brunson is like a small guard, but I don't really associate him as a smaller guard because of his height. When you look at the way that he plays, his strength, he's very good at using his body to get to where he wants to go. He attacks mismatches, and that was on full display in the third quarter. And LaMelo was that mismatch that they were hunting. And JB is also very good at outstanding at like stopping on a dime, typically around the elbow area, and just pulling up for a mid-range jumper. He creates a ton of space that way as he stops his momentum and pulls up for that mid-range shot. Or he could just physically back you down as well. So that's why I don't think the small guard term really applies to him, even though if you're just looking at the height, sure. I mean, I think that's just his measurables, but the way that he plays is not as a small guard would play. But yeah, in that third quarter, just too much for the Hornets. He even got Khan on a switch. It didn't matter who was guarding him. They were hunting those mismatches, and they were taking advantage of those. It was pretty apparent. And he finished with 16 points in that third quarter and was 4 of 5 in the paint during that span. An X's and O's thing that I wanted to point out, because it's something that I noticed while watching, and someone had asked about it in our Substack chat, was the center matchup and how that panned out. Charlotte, as they did in the previous game in Atlanta with Plumlee starting on Daniels, they started with a cross match of Kalkbrenner on Josh Hart. Now, the rationale behind this is probably a partial, hey, cross your fingers, hope this low volume 3-point shooter who's not typically a floor spacer misses his shots. Like, that's part of the rationale. It's also a way to get Kalkbrenner as an extra backline defender because he's going to be sagging deep. So if Towns or whoever gets into the paint, Ryan can come over and help protect the rim and not have to worry about a guy that is a high volume 3-point shooter. But early on, you could tell that this wasn't going to work. And to be honest, it really wasn't so much that Josh Hart was lighting it up from behind the arc and killing Kalkbrenner in that sense. I believe he was just 1 of 1 when Kalkbrenner was defending Hart. It was the flexibility and the versatility and the ways that he was unable to stay with Josh Hart. So the switchability and having to guard Cat on occasion, like if he ever had to do that, even then that was difficult for Ryan. There was this one play early on where I made a mental note where I was like, yeah, Lee is going to have to make a change here. Hart was in the corner. Kalkbrenner closed out really hard for a contest. Hart passes it to Towns, if I remember correctly, immediately cuts to the basket for a give-and-go dunk. And Ryan just had no shot of closing out, moving laterally to get the stop on that play, unless he just decided to not close out hard and maybe do one of his cornet closeouts and allow the corner three, which, to be honest, if that's what you're going to do with the center cross match, is probably the way that you want to go, because you're hanging yourself out to dry if you are having Kalkbrenner trying to run out to the corner and close out hard. So if that's the strategy you're trying to employ, then you almost have to live with those corner threes from Josh Hart. So I think when that play happened, that point forward, I made a mental note of thinking, okay, they're going to have to put Diabate in here. And I think that was the same thought that crossed Charles Lee's mind as Lee tried to match Diabate's minutes with Towns.